Roller coasters are a timeless classic, and have been thrilling millions and millions of riders for well over 100 years. In this day and age, roller coasters have become more technologically advanced than ever before. Like Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, a multi-launching roller coaster filled with all sorts of special effects, located at Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida, which I covered in my last episode of Problematic Roller Coasters. Hagrid's is a true representation of how far roller coaster technology has advanced, with its ridiculous 7 launch sections, special effects, and moving track pieces. But what about before roller coasters became this technologically advanced? Before computers were used to design them, or even before heavy-duty machinery existed to build them. In this video, we will be taking a step backward in time to take a look at the oldest operating roller coaster in the world and to show the hardships it has taken to keep it operating. The ride goes by the name Leap the Dips and is located at Lakemont Park in Altoona, Pennsylvania. When the ride was built in the early 1900s, there were hundreds of coasters just like Leap the Dips, but today in 2020, it's the last of its kind. Before we get started, if you guys wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that would be greatly appreciated, as that helps the channel greatly against the YouTube algorithm. Also, shouts out to my friend Nate, otherwise known as Uncle Nate, who helped get a lot of the information for this video. Alright, let's dig in. Warning, some viewers may be too lame to enjoy the following information. The Coney Island Cyclone, which operates at Luna Park in Brooklyn, New York, is arguably one of the most famous roller coasters of all time. It originally opened on June 26th of 1927, making it 93 years old at the time of recording. Cyclone is so legendary that it was named a historic landmark on June 26th of 1991, which was its 64th anniversary. A ride on Cyclone truly feels like a step back in time, and yet as legendary as the coaster is, it is far more ahead on a technological standpoint than Leap the Dips is. Leap the Dips opened on June 2nd of 1902, more than 118 years ago at the time of recording. So technically, Leap the Dips could be the Coney Island Cyclone's father or mother. In fact, when Leap the Dips opened, most guests traveled to Lakemont Park by horse. So while Cyclone and Leap the Dips are both wooden roller coasters, they are completely different types of wooden coasters. Cyclone is much closer in concept to a modern wooden roller coaster, whereas Leap the Dips is part of a nearly extinct breed of wooden roller coasters that predates the more modern styling of Cyclone. Its breed is known as the side friction wooden roller coaster, which were wildly popular during the early 20th century. Side friction roller coasters were the first to use 2 different sets of wheels. First were the standard road wheels, mounted underneath the cars, which carried all weight. And new to the side friction roller coaster was a second set of wheels mounted to the sides of each car, which helped to steer them around turns. Rather than the track consisting of 8 layers of wood like on today's wooden roller coasters that all wheels come in contact with, the track was only 1 layer thick at most points, and each wheel had its own separate track. The road wheels ran on flat wooden boards placed parallel to each other. This portion of wood would directly support the weight of the cars, and would do so with only 1 layer of wood. The side friction wheels ran along vertically placed sideboards that were positioned on both sides of the cars. This meant that the side friction track hugged each car and overall made the track more like a trough. Prior to the invention of the side friction roller coaster was the Scenic Railway roller coaster, which were like miniature railways that ran on narrow gauge steel tracks. Most early versions of the Scenic Railway were constructed through themed buildings or artificial mountains, hence their name. Scenic Railways only used 1 set of wheels, and did not have side friction wheels to help steer trains around turns. Instead, the single pair of running wheels were flanged, like the wheels found on railway cars. These flanged edges made turns possible by gripping the sides of the steel rails. However, it was critical that the trains on a scenic railway did not ride around turns too quickly, as the flanged edges could slip over the rails and cause derailments. So scenic railway coasters also featured a brakeman, who was a park worker who actually sat or stood between cars of a train and slowed it down using a manual brake. The brakeman worked to keep the speed of a train in check, to not only prevent derailments during turns, but also to keep trains from lifting up off the rails during drops or ascents. Some scenic railway roller coasters are still in operation today, like Scenic Railway at Luna Park in Melbourne, Australia. Originally built in 1912, Scenic Railway still operates on its single set of flanged wheels, and relies on a brakeman or brakewoman that stands between the first and second car of each train. Sometimes, these rides can get stuck if they are slowed down too much by the manual brake. Here's a video of a stalled train on Scenic Railway being pushed to get it going again. But as time continued on, there was a need for a more thrilling roller coaster, and the man that made that possible was Edward J. Morris of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On June 26th of 1894, he would patent the figure-8 toboggan slide, aka the side friction roller coaster. Through his patent, Morris added side friction wheels alongside the existing weight-bearing road wheels that rode along the new side friction track. The side friction track created a deep trough or well for the cars to ride through, which highly limited the chance of cars from derailing or overturning. Compared to the Scenic Railway, this allowed cars to glide through curves at higher speeds and to do so more safely, ultimately eliminating the need for a brakeman and also allowing the coasters to become much more thrilling. Along with the patent, Morris also created the classic figure-8 layout we see on Leap the Dips. When viewing the ride from above, the track forms an actual figure-8. Now, I'm not sure if Morris actually came up with the idea for the side friction roller coaster or even the figure-8 roller coaster. According to Roller Coaster Database, or RCDB.com, the earliest side friction roller coaster opened in 1889 and also featured a figure-8 layout. Judging by pictures, it looks quite similar to Morris's design, and I'm not sure if he had anything to do with this coaster. But Morris has the patent and designed the roller coaster we're discussing in this video, so I guess I'll keep talking about him. Morris would open his first toboggan slide at Willow Grove Park near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1896. The coaster went by the name Scenic and would thrill riders all the way until 1975, a whole 79 years. The ride had a couple nicknames as well, like Little Scenic or Nickel Scenic, as the ride only cost park visitors a nickel to ride for its entire lifespan. Now oddly, Nickel Scenic was not a figure-8, but instead was an out-and-back coaster that ran through the woods. Morris would also design and build a chutes ride for Willow Grove Park that sent riders sliding down a massive incline into a large pool of water. Morris also had a patent for this ride type as well, which he called the Inclined Railway and Water Tobogganing Apparatus. Morris had an office and factory in Philadelphia. Over the years, the company would expand and open additional offices in Des Moines, Iowa, and Leavenworth, Kansas. Morris and his three brothers would join together and form the Morris Chute Company in 1896. On top of selling chutes and figure-8 toboggan slides, the company also began producing carousels and delivered their first in 1899 for Chestnut Hill Park in Pennsylvania. The company would go on to manufacture dozens and dozens of figure-8 toboggans, chutes, and carousels. They would either sell the rides, lease them, or operate them as concessionaires. So in 1902, when the company produced Leap the Dips for Lakemont Park, the ride was one of many other Morris Chute Company figure-8 toboggans. Just a year later in 1903, Morris grew more interested in solely operating his figure-8 toboggans rather than selling or manufacturing them, and actually sold the manufacturing end of his business to two men. These men would take the former manufacturing side of Morris Chute Company and create the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, or PTC. PTC would go on to become one of the world's largest builders of roller coasters and carousels, and have built 128 roller coasters to this date. Now, PTC doesn't build roller coasters anymore, but they have built many classics, such as Rocket at Playland Park in 1948, which we all know now as Phoenix at Knoebels, or Screamin' Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis, which opened in 1976. Screamin' Eagle is an excellent out-and-back terrain coaster that blasts riders through the woods of Missouri. Nowadays, PTC mainly supply and maintain their fleet of wooden coaster trains that run on a large amount of today's wooden coasters. On November 13th of 2018, the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, otherwise known as IAAPA, inducted Edward Joy Morris into the IAAPA Hall of Fame. The IAAPA Hall of Fame honors those who have contributed a significant and lasting impact for the amusement industry. By the 1920s, Leap the Dips was among some 250 other figure-8 style side friction toboggan roller coasters in the United States. The other versions also went by the names Leap the Dips, Dip the Dips, Drop the Dips, Figure-8, or Toboggan Slide. Just for comparison, if you thought there were a lot of Vekoma SLCs in operation today, only 42 different ones have been built. Many parks you might know today had their own figure-8 style side friction coasters. Seabreeze in Rochester, New York had one. Their version went by the popular name Figure-8 and operated from 1903 to 1915. Conneaut Lake Park in Conneaut Lake, Pennsylvania also had a figure-8 coaster by the name of Jackrabbit, which operated from 1904 to 1936. Cedar Point even had one. Their version went by the name Loop the Loop and also opened in 1902 alongside Leap the Dips. The ride lasted from its opening day on May 31st of 1902 to 1909. Side friction coasters didn't stop there and continued to grow and feature longer and crazier layouts, like Runaway Coaster at Funland Park in Folkestone, England. Runaway Coaster was originally built during the 1920s and was actually built as a traveling portable roller coaster. one that could be quickly disassembled, transported, and then reassembled at a new location. Supposedly, Funland's owner found the coaster sitting in a field in Holland. He decided to restore the coaster and opened it at his park in 1997. At the time, his park went by the name Rotunda. Runaway Coaster would operate here from 1997 until 2003 when the park sadly closed down. An even larger side friction coaster was Giant Coaster at Crystal Beach in Ontario, Canada, which stood at a height of 58 feet or 17.7 meters and featured 2,627 feet or 800.7 meters of track. Unlike Leap the Dips, Giant Coaster featured multi-car trains, 3 cars with 3 rows each, and much larger drops that went all the way down to ground level. Giant Coaster operated from 1916 until it closed on September 4th of 1989, which is an extremely healthy 73 years, much longer than the lifespan of your average roller coaster. But as time continued on, roller coaster designers continued to innovate and come up with new and better ideas so that roller coasters could continue to get better and better. The problem with side friction coasters was that trains were not truly locked to the track. While side friction coasters had fancy side wheels that helped steer around turns, there was still no method to keep trains from lifting off the tracks vertically. That would change in 1919 when legendary roller coaster designer John Miller patented the under friction wheel. With the change to the track design of wooden roller coasters, Miller made it possible to add a wheel that rode underneath the track. This wheel could ensure trains could not lift vertically from the tracks. Nowadays, this wheel is referred to as the upstop wheel. Combined with the existing road wheels that carried all weight and the side friction wheels that tracked the trains through turns, this 3-wheel system truly locked a roller coaster train to the track and ensured that a train would stay on the rails pretty much no matter what. This allowed roller coasters to become bigger, feature more airtime or negative G-forces, and travel much faster, even around turns. Because of the ride experience improvements, amusement parks stopped building side friction roller coasters, which ultimately leads to why we have more classic wooden roller coasters like the Coney Island Cyclone that does have a form of an upstop wheel and not too many side friction roller coasters left. The side friction coaster simply became outdated. But oddly enough, many parks still continue to build Scenic Railway style coasters following the invention of the upstop wheel, like Rutsjebanen at Bakken in Klampenborg, Denmark. Rutsjebanen, which translates to roller coaster in English, opened on May 16th of 1932 and still thrills riders to this day. Or Vuoristorata at Linnanmäki in Helsinki, Finland, which opened on July 13th of 1951 and also still operates to this day. These coasters still sport the single set of flanged road wheels that help the train steer around turns, and Vuoristorata still relies on a brakeman who manually slows down each train so that it stays on the track. Rutsjebanen was updated in 2010 so that it no longer requires a brakeman. This was made possible by the introduction of an automatic brake system placed on the track that slows down the coaster instead. Just to reflect, Leap the Dips used to be among some 250 other side friction toboggan coasters in the United States, and among even more worldwide. And 118 years later, Leap the Dips is the only surviving coaster of its kind. Stats-wise, Leap the Dips is absolutely dwarfed by the massive roller coasters built today. Even many family-oriented roller coasters are larger than Leap the Dips. At a height of only 41 feet, or 12.5 meters, Leap the Dips traverses a total of 1,452 feet, or 442.5 meters of track. The ride is built in the shape of a figure 8 and sits on a plot of land 84 feet wide by 229 feet long, or about 26 meters by 70 meters. Throughout the layout, the track gradually works its way back to ground as cars travel through a series of wide turns and small dips. The entire ride is essentially stacked on top of itself, and riders work their way back to ground one layer at a time. The ride's largest drop is a staggering 9 feet, or 2.7 meters, sloped at 25 degrees. With such a small drop, the ride only reaches a maximum speed of about 10 miles per hour, or 16 kilometers per hour. But as unimpressive as these stats may seem in 2020, it's not all about size, it's how you use it, and the ride still manages to deliver quite the punch. Leap the Dips manages to make up for its small size by featuring no restraints on its trains. Riders simply sit on top of a cushioned bench and have nothing but a grab bar to hold onto. There are no lap bars, over-the-shoulder restraints, or even seatbelts. And contrary to what you might think, Leap the Dips features a ton of airtime. When the ride is running fast, you will lift out of your seat on nearly every dip. Riders in the front row of each car will get mild floater airtime, and riders in the back row get borderline ejector airtime, all without any type of restraint at all. And the ride has no upstop wheels, which makes the idea of it having airtime even crazier. The ride begins with a push out of the station house by a ride operator. And by push, I mean the ride operator literally pushes your car out of the station to get it going. Because in 1902, the luxury of a tire drive propulsion system did not exist yet. Humans instead were the tire drives and still are 118 years later. The ride operator will push your car all the way through a left turn until it engages the chain lift. The chain lift quickly pulls each car to the top of the lift hill as it smacks against wooden planks that serve as the anti-rollback system. Your car reaches the top of the lift hill and descends down a small dip. This gives the car a good amount of speed as it cruises around a left turn. When running at a decent speed, riders will receive a small amount of lateral forces as the cars rub against the right side track. Riders will also feel their car bouncing up and down as the train travels between unsupported sections of track. This is something that will be felt throughout the whole ride. After the first turn, the train travels down a small dip. Riders in the front row receive a small amount of floater airtime, and riders in the back will lift off their seats. The car will continue to ride out the dip as you bounce up and down pretty wildly. Next, the car enters a right-hand turn, delivering another dose of lateral forces. After bouncing your way through the turn, the ride heads towards the drop prior and then dives underneath it. Riders are given a great dose of unrestrained airtime as they bounce their way up and down. Your car then heads underneath the structure of the first left-hand turn and enters a second left-hand turn. After another session of laterals and bouncing, your car bobs through two back-to-back dips that quickly throw riders up and then back down into their seats. The second dip really throws you out of your seat and will make you question what exactly just happened. Following the back-to-back dips, the car heads into another right-hand turn as it weaves through the wooden structure. This leads into the largest drop on the ride. At only 9 feet, or 2.7 meters tall, this drop still manages to feature an impressive amount of airtime, especially in the back row, all without any kind of restraint. The car rises back up into the last left turn that sits beneath the earlier two left-hand curves from before. This leads to 2 more dips as the ride heads back towards the station. Unfortunately, these last few hills don't deliver any airtime, even if the ride is running very fast. And after about 1 minute of ride time, the car hits the final brake run, which ends the ride. So as small as Leap the Dips is, it manages to deliver quite the punch, especially when it's running very fast. On some days, the ride will reportedly reach speeds of 15 miles per hour, which is about 24 kilometers per hour. While that may not sound like much, that's a 50% increase in speed from the design top speed of 10 miles per hour. Picture if El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure hit 105 miles per hour at the bottom of its first drop instead of 70 miles per hour. Just imagine how crazy the ride would be. On days like this where Leap the Dips is absolutely hauling, the airtime is nearly back-breaking, especially in the back row. The ride will launch you up and then quickly have you slam back down into your seat. But on the contrary, the ride can absolutely crawl through the layout instead. On cold days, or even just in general when the ride hasn't run much, the first few runs may absolutely creep through the layout, just like in this video where basically at any moment, it seems like the coaster is ready to stall. Or other days, the coaster will cruise through the layout but not fast enough to deliver back-breaking airtime. More like in this video where it seems to be running as designed. So the amount of airtime and lateral forces you receive on your ride may vary by a large margin. It all depends how fast the coaster is running that day. On some days, you may even witness the coaster valley mid-ride with riders on board. By valley, I mean the coaster will run out of speed mid-ride and either stall during a turn or even get stuck in the valley of a dip. Watching this video here, you'll notice the car is stalled on a turn. Park workers begin running behind the back of the car as they push it back up to speed. But because the ride is running slower in general, this boost still isn't enough and the car bottoms out in between 2 dips. Now if you do valley while you're on board Leap the Dips, it's actually perfectly safe, and it's one of the few coasters where if you valley mid-ride, you get to stay aboard the train, as park workers try to push you through the rest of the ride. So if anything, if you get to experience valleying on Leap the Dips, it's actually a rare treat. Now many of you may come to my videos expecting a lesson on block zones, and fear not, this video will not let you down. If you weren't already aware, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding with one another. This safety system is usually computer controlled and will automatically ensure that trains do not come in contact with each other. Now this begs the question if Leap the Dips has a block zone system, and guess what? It doesn't. Being that there were no computers in 1902, Leap the Dips has no computer to this day that the coaster runs with. So if you were to ask a computer, Leap the Dips has 1 block zone, which basically means 0 block zones. So the park could cram the track with as many cars as they pleased without a computer penalty. Now rather than relying on computers, Leap the Dips instead relies on humans to safely keep cars distanced between each other. So if you've ever built a Connect model roller coaster that wasn't computer automated, Leap the Dips runs just like that. Here's my best guess at how the block zone diagram would look if you asked the ride operator running the ride. So here we have the track layout. First is the load block, where riders board into the cars. Next is the lift block. Third is the gravity block. And last is the unload block, where riders disembark the attraction. Now keep in mind, because the ride is manually operated without the use of a computer, it is up to the free will of the humans working the ride to maintain this block system. Otherwise, there are no blocks. For instance, the lift hill is always just on. Once a ride operator pushes a car into the lift hill will simply pull a car up and dump it into the layout, even if there is another car ahead that hasn't cleared the final brake run. So the ride operator would have to manually stop the lift hill to prevent that. Or if the ride operator really wanted to, they could push 2 cars into the lift hill back to back. It's really no different than a Connects model roller coaster. The final brake run is manually controlled as well. By default, the brakes are in a position ready to slow down a car and stop it. But if the ride host really wanted to, they could lower the brakes with the brake lever. This would allow the car to charge full speed into the station. On a computer-mandated block zone, it wouldn't be possible to override slowing down the car. Now you'll probably never have to worry about this because the ride almost always runs with just 1 car. In fact, I've never heard about 2 cars being on the track at the same time. The ride originally came with 7 cars, which may have all used to operate together at the same time. But that was at a time when multi-train operations on roller coasters was standard without a computer system. If Leap the Dips were running at a large corporate amusement park, the park most likely would have upgraded the coaster to have a computer-mandated block system. But Lakemont Park has kept Leap the Dips in its original form. In fact, most of the coaster is pretty much unchanged. The skid brakes used on the final brake run and in the station are still made completely out of wood and do not feature metal plating on top. This means each car slides directly on top of wood rather than steel. Many older wooden roller coasters, like Thunderbolt at Kennywood, which opened in 1924, feature metal plating on top of its skid brakes. With Leap the Dips, you know you're still sliding on top of wood as you can almost smell burning wood after the ride has been running for a few hours. And as I mentioned before, the skid brakes are also completely manually controlled and do not use any kind of computer automation. By default, the brakes will slow down a car, but the ride operator working the brake run will use the brake lever to manually lower the skid brakes once the car has slowed down to a desired speed. The anti-rollback system used on the lift hill is also unchanged. The anti-rollbacks are what prevents a car from rolling backwards down a lift hill, say if the lift chain were to snap. On Leap the Dips, this system consists of large wooden planks attached to both sides of the track. As each car climbs the lift, the car slaps the planks out of the way, and after the car passes, each plank falls back into place, ready to catch the car if needed. Even the lift chain is super odd, and I believe it's also unchanged. Underneath the top of the lift hill is the motor house, which houses the motor for the chain lift. But the motor doesn't directly attach to the chain lift. Instead, it attaches to a chain that runs its way nearly vertically to the top of the lift hill. This chain spins a gear, which is actually what spins the ride's main lift hill. And at the bottom of the lift hill is a second lift chain that is spun using the ride's main lift chain. It's super weird, but it's all connected and it works. The only modifications made to the ride over the years have been to help improve its reliability. Nowadays, each car on Leap the Dips rides on metal road wheels and metal side friction wheels. These steel wheels ride on top of steel running plates that line the surfaces of the ride's track. This way, the steel wheels don't actually come in contact with the wood track, which helps to reduce friction. But when the ride first opened, and for much of its career, there were no steel running plates on top of the wooden track, so the wheels simply rode on top of the wood. And to make things even crazier, the wheels themselves used to be made out of wood as well. This is something you'd literally never see today on a wooden roller coaster. When everything was just wood, the road wheels and the track the road wheels rolled across were both made of sugar maple. Sugar maple was used because it's a very hard wood, which probably helped to reduce the amount of friction. And the side friction boards were originally made from longleaf pine. During the 1950s is when Leap the Dips began to receive a few upgrades. Steel running plates were placed in the ride's dips, and also in high-stress areas to help reduce wear and tear on the wooden track. The longleaf pine side friction boards also began to be replaced with plywood. And at this time, steel running plates were also added to the side friction boards. Nowadays, the park retracts Leap the Dips with white oak rather than sugar maple. White oak is one of the hardest woods around, and it's also very permeable. It's important for the wood pieces to be permeable, as the ride's maintenance team must actually pre-bend each wooden track piece before placing them into position. This is completely different from your standard wooden roller coaster today, where track is bent to the structure instead. The reason the track has to be pre-bent is because the track is only one layer thick, and there aren't multiple layers of track that can be used to help bend the track to the structure. The only time the track becomes 2 layers thick is at track splices or sometimes on the drops and valleys. So in a sense, Leap the Dips is actually more similar to an Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster like El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. The park has molds that they use to steam press each piece of track to, as well as a steam room nearby the lift hill. Inside the steam room, the track pieces are clamped to the mold to help force the shape. Once the track has been properly molded, they can attach it to the structure. Let's take a look at the structure of the ride. You'll notice vertical sections of wood, with horizontal ledgers at the top that connect directly to the track. These are called bents, and make up a large amount of the wooden structure. In between the vertical sections are diagonal beams to help make the structure rigid as it connects each bent to each other. Now there are only so many supports on Leap the Dip structure, which leads to gaps between each ledger. The ledgers are what provide most of the track support, but in between each ledger, the ride's track must support the load of moving cars. And taking a look at the different dips on the ride, the number of ledgers to support the track doesn't increase. On modern day wooden roller coasters, designers will double the number of vertical bents to allow for double the number of ledgers in high stress areas. This helps to absorb the force of a moving train as it applies more energy to the structure. But Leap the Dips doesn't feature any additional bents during its dips, leaving the track to kind of support itself during these high stress moments. This causes the track in all the dips to shake and bend wildly with the passing of each car. To stay rigid, the track relies on the green side friction boards that help add strength. The side friction boards connect to the main running track with the use of cross ties, which are the wooden braces found on the outsides of the track. Together, this system gives the track enough strength to support the weight of moving cars. But being such an old design, it does cause a lot of problems. It's common for the cross ties to break, as they transfer forces between the side running and road running track. Luckily, the Lakemont maintenance team proactively have extra cross ties pre-built and ready to go. So once it's noticed that a cross tie is in need of replacement, the maintenance team will immediately swap it out with a new one. Nowadays, when you take a look at the structure, you'll notice a lot of unpainted pieces of wood. These unpainted pieces of wood are new ones that have been placed on the ride, so the ride is well taken care of. It's also common for the wheels to cause problems. Sometimes, the ball bearings inside each wheel will go bad, or in the case of this video, the entire road wheel seems to just be gone. Luckily, the maintenance crew are able to quickly swap wheels and get the ride going again. In this video example, provided by East Coaster General, the maintenance workers replaced the wheel right on the transfer track. After lifting the car with wood, the crew were able to slide the new wheel into place, and then the car is ready to go again. Now, being a 118-year-old roller coaster, Leap the Dips has certainly had its ups and downs throughout its long history. While today in 2020, the coaster is fully operational and delivers rides to thousands and thousands of people, but that hasn't always been the case. In 1936, Leap the Dips would spend that entire season closed. I'm not sure of the exact reason why, but it appears a major flood struck the park on St. Patrick's Day of that year. I don't believe Leap the Dip sustained serious damage during that flood, but another one of the park's roller coasters did. That coaster was called Twister and was a wooden roller coaster built by PTC and designed by Herbert Paul Schmeck. Schmeck has designed many wooden roller coasters, like Comet at Hershey Park. Twister was damaged so heavily that it never opened again and was demolished in 1937. Fortunately, Leap the Dips reopened to the public for the 1937 season and began to operate year after year for the general public. Things would change, however, in 1985 when Boyer Bros. Candy Company proposed to buy Lakemont Park and remodel it after the very successful Hershey Park. At the time, Lakemont Park was not doing so well and was hardly turning a profit, so the owners agreed to sell. Boyer Bros. Took Lakemont Park and turned it into Boyertown. However, Boyertown was expensive and took the park away from its pre-World War I-like atmosphere Lakemont Park was known for. The new owners also had no interest in continuing to operate Leap the Dips, which at the time was 83 years old. The ride had fallen into a state of disrepair, and Boyertown did not think the ride was worth maintaining, so as a result, Leap the Dips would close in 1985. But to the surprise of the new buyers, the park did even worse as Boyertown than how Lakemont Park performed during its worst of days. In 1988, Ralph Albarano bought the falling Boyertown Park back and promised to re-traditionalize the park and turn it back into the affordable Lakemont Park. Thankfully, Boyer Bros had never demolished Leap the Dips, so the ride was still standing. Unfortunately, even with the rebirth of Lakemont Park, there wasn't enough money or interest to restore Leap the Dips. In 1993, there was a glimmer of hope for the future of Leap the Dips when it was added to the National Register of Historic Places, which is a United States federal list of different places, buildings, sites, or objects that are deemed worthy of preservation for their historical significance. The The American coaster enthusiasts, known as ACE, had also begun a fundraising effort to raise money to help save Leap the Dips. This would lead to the formation of the official Leap the Dips Preservation Foundation. The group began working vigorously to raise the $1 million necessary to restore Leap the Dips. What's crazy to think about is that Leap the Dips cost $15,000 to build in 1902, and in the 1990s, $1 million was required just to renovate it. In 1996, efforts by the American coaster enthusiasts paid off when Leap the Dips was officially designated a National Historic Landmark, meaning the United States government now officially recognized the coaster for its outstanding historical significance. This is a step beyond being placed on the list of National Register of Historic Places, and of the 90,000 places listed on the National Register, only about 3%, or 2,500, are recognized as National Historic Landmarks. This helped to raise even more awareness about Leap the Dips and additional funding. Funding began pooling in from private citizens, from the Pennsylvania Heritage Preservation Committee, from the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Committee, and also from local banks. With all the publicity and money raised by the American coaster enthusiasts and the Leap the Dips Preservation Foundation, Lakemont Park were able to afford the necessary design and reconstructive work to have Leap the Dips revitalized. That work began on May 16th of 1998, and P. Joseph Lehman, Inc., Consulting Engineers, was selected and given the opportunity to conduct the restoration design and construction inspection of Leap the Dips. But even with the team of well-qualified engineers, there was still a lot of work ahead of them. Here are some pictures and video of Leap the Dips in the late 1990s after it had sat closed for over a decade. The state of disrepair the ride was in is evident. The wood looks rotted, and overall, the ride looks to be in shambles. In 1998, deconstructive work began as part of the effort to restore the coaster. Much of the ride's rotten structure and track needed to be removed. Interestingly enough, a carpenter who specialized in restoring furniture was hired to oversee the restoration and help to retain 70% of the original lumber used on the ride. Because Leap the Dips was now considered a National Historic Landmark, special care was needed so that the original character of the ride was not changed. This meant that the ride needed to be revitalized, using similar built-by-hand techniques that were originally used in 1902 when the ride was first built. New lumber for the restoration was purchased 1 year prior to allow it to acclimate or adjust to the climate of Altoona, Pennsylvania. A steam box was built right next to the ride in order to shape the track pieces using the same method used in 1902 when the coaster was first built. The coaster station house, car shed, and motor house were also restored as well using the old techniques. The work paid off, and the newly renovated Leap the Dips would reopen to the public on May 31st of 1999, and the coaster still strikingly resembled the original version that opened in 1902. There were still no upstop wheels, the track still consisted of one layer of wood, the anti-rollback still consisted of wooden planks that slapped cars as they climbed the lift hill, and the ride was still manually operated, without the use of a computer. And with a fresh coat of white and green paint, the ride looked better than ever. Leap the Dips is truly a historic roller coaster that has ultimately survived the test of time. The 1902 roller coaster has survived 118 years and should run again in 2021 and hopefully for many more years to come. When you think about it, this roller coaster has operated through World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, and so much more. It's even operated through the recent pandemic, which is just another item to add to its list. It's no doubt, however, that the ride requires a special amount of attention to keep it going, as the modern building and maintenance techniques used on a wooden roller coaster of today cannot be applied directly to the older styling of Leap the Dips. The Leap the Dips carpentry and maintenance team have mastered the craft of maintaining this 118-year-old side friction wooden roller coaster, and I hope their craft is passed down from generation to generation. You can support Lakemont Park and their efforts to maintain the operation of Leap the Dips by simply taking a visit to the park and taking a few rides on Leap the Dips yourself. Overall, that's a complete win-win. Even if you're not a roller coaster enthusiast, I'm sure a ride on Leap the Dips would still be worth it for you. The ride may not feature the heights, speeds, lengths, thrills, or even technology of a roller coaster built in the past few decades, but it certainly makes up for that with its historical connection and lack of any restraints. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it helped grow your appreciation for the world's oldest operating roller coaster, Leap the Dips. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to take a ride on Leap the Dips whenever you have the chance. Tell the Park El Toro Ryan sent you. I'd like to give a quick last shout out to Uncle Nate and also Peter, who both filmed many of the shots used in this video, as well as Lakemont Park for providing a behind the scenes tour, and for all others who allowed me to use their footage in this video. It is greatly appreciated. And just one last reminder, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, everyone. Peace.